Renegade River, your hunting, camping, and survival store. Stop in and check out their new and used firearms, sporting goods, Army and Navy supplies, and survival gear. Downtown Spring Lake, next to the police station. Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.
News Talk 1090 is the talk of Muskegon.
Welcome to the Mike Hewitt Show. My name is Mike Hewitt, and in the studio with me today, I've got a house full of people again. Jim Riley, welcome back.
I'm back, thank you.
And with us, with Jim and I, is Ken Berman, who you're a candidate in the state rep race 92nd district. Is that right?
That is correct.
You're a Republican candidate.
Yes, I am.
Very nice. Who is your opponent?
Marcia Hovey-Wright.
Okay, she's an incumbent right now?
She is indeed.
Okay, and this is your daughter's birthday. That's way more important than anything else.
It is. It's far more important than anything I'm doing.
I think so. Listen, folks, call-in phone number for the show today, 855-357-1911. Please give us a call in during the show. We've got Ken and I think Rob Steele will call in at some point during the day, during the show time. And the topic for today is interesting. We're starting with you. The topic for today is going to be the proper role of government, but more importantly, how less government or more government actually affects us at street level. So that's going to be kind of the overriding theme. But before we get to that, tell me a little bit about your candidacy.
Well, I got involved into this race looking at what was taking place in terms of job creation, crime issues, education, veterans programs here in Muskegon County and most specifically the state of Michigan. And the leadership coming out of our current state representative just isn't there. Going through not necessarily her voting record, but looking at the bills that she has sponsored and co-sponsored, I'm not seeing anything that says to me, I care about crime, I care about the economy, I care about veterans in the state of Michigan.
What types of things is she focused on?
Well, I pulled out the most recent sponsored bills, and she's got one that declared a state holiday for the 50th anniversary of the Peace Corps.
Okay. That's very important.
Absolutely.
Right.
I'm confident that that's driving jobs and helping
right.
The crime in the inner city.
Okay, I got to tell you, well, before we get too far into the detail, tell us a little bit, what makes up the 92nd district geographically?
White River Township,
okay,
Fruitland Township, Laketon, North Muskegon, Muskegon Heights, and Muskegon Township.
Tends to be a pretty moderate district?
It seems very moderate.
Okay, not far left, not far right, but moderate, just to make sure I'm using the word
Absolutely.
correctly.
Well, it may be a moderate district, but the last time a Republican was elected in this district, even though they do change a little bit over time, but the last time a Republican was elected as a state representative in this district, there were mastodons in the tar pits that we now call Muskegon Lake.
So
this is a Democrat, solid Democrat district.
You think
has been.
You're telling me it's not moderate, it leans left. Is that
well,
what you're
no,
saying?
the people itself may very well be moderate, but the simple fact is that it has voted Democrat forever.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about, typically it's about a 68% Democratic market.
But when you
at this point,
but
okay.
when you ran down the list of the townships or the municipalities that make up that district, it sounded like two extremes to me. You've got a couple townships or municipalities that are very hard left, and a couple of them that tend to be more right wing. Am I wrong with that?
I don't know that you're wrong. I think the most difficult issue that we face with the Republican Party running any candidate, me or anyone else, is getting the message out to people that actually matter.
Okay.
And what I'm finding, I think the most ironic portion of my candidacy has been the Republican Party's lack of excitement in my race.
Is it you or the race?
The race.
Okay. You're saying that they're taking a hands-off approach.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
What do you think the reason is for that?
I think, as Jim said, the fact that this is typically a 68% Democratic district forces the House caucus to just do a hands-off and pretty much broadcast that to all the supporters.
I think their thinking is that, and it goes to Jim's point, if it's been a Democrat stronghold since Macedonians walked on earth, they're thinking, let's take our limited resources and invest it in districts that could go one way or another. Is that a fair thing?
No, I think that's very fair.
Okay, well then tell me, what's your background, by the way?
Born and raised here in Michigan. I was born in Muskegon County, raised down in Kalamazoo.
Right.
Served as a first lieutenant in the United States Army.
Okay, thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. I was a logistics officer in the Old Guard, passing out flags to widows at Arlington Cemetery. Great honor, but never gave me the opportunity to do what I wanted to do, which was really lead men. I left the service and took a position as a director of sales and marketing for, at that time, Equifax Credit Services, and moved on into the educational market, working with Kaplan as a national director, and then at Princeton Review as regional vice president, and most recently as a regional VP for the University of Phoenix. And in 2009, University of Phoenix discovered that the Midwest was in a recession and provided me the opportunity to lay off a huge staff and tender my resignation. And I've done a little consulting work, and most recently accepted a position as a part-time employee at Bed Bath & Beyond.
Okay. What's your education background?
Undergraduate degree in political science, history, philosophy, and religion from Western Michigan University.
Okay.
And I've got my MBA from Cornell.
Very, very nice.
And wait a minute, let's not forget the fact that you did play football for University of Michigan.
I played football.
Back in the days when they did really have football.
And I've got bad knees to prove it.
When you say back in the day, he's not old enough to have wore leather helmets and all of that, Jim.
My grandfather wore the leather helmets.
Did he?
And yeah.
Now that was back in the day. That was a whole different game.
It was well, it was something.
What position did you play?
I played fullback.
Okay, very, very good. So you saw some battle scars there, probably.
Yeah, and right now I've got the excitement and the joy. I'm one of the assistant coaches for my daughter's 3rd and 4th grade team over in Whitehall, and we're hoping to find out whether or not we're moving on to the playoffs next Saturday.
How old? Your daughter's birthday is today. How old is she today?
She is 8 years old and here in the studio with us.
Very, very nice. Happy birthday, Abigail. Thank you. Big smile, everybody. Listen, to me, that's what all of this is about. Is to say what direction are we going into the future, and let's have a reasoned conversation. You and I had an opportunity to talk a couple days ago on the phone. One of the things that impressed me about you was you're probably way more moderate than I am. What I liked about that was we were able to have a very reasoned and respectful conversation, and that seems to be absent from the political arena of late. And we've got to get all folks back to the arena to have reasoned and respectful conversations on differences.
Well, and I couldn't agree more. I think one of the biggest problems that I've seen, and unfortunately I've been witness to, in fact, I was sitting in, Dave Ealing, who's the director of the Veterans Administration here in Muskegon County, was sitting in his office in the waning hours of Holly Hughes' term in office, and she had submitted 12 bills that provided absolutely nothing to veterans, but they were 12 veteran-concerned bills. And Marcia had voted against all 12 of them and had called Dave while I was in there, apologizing for the way she had voted, claiming that she had no idea what she was voting on, and that she had to pass along how much she loved all of us. So,
tell me something, just to make sure I'm trying to pick up on maybe the tone that you used. How's your relationship with Holly Hughes? She's a candidate again for the chair that she lost. She's been on the show once or twice, once for certain. And I've known her for probably a little over a decade. Of course, she's much more moderate than I am, but we have a respectful relationship, same as I identified with you. But where are you and Holly at? It's right. It's a neighboring district is kind of why I'm asking.
Absolutely, and I think that Holly and I have a mutual respect for one another. I would not say that we are close, but I think that Holly and I are in different circles, which makes it somewhat difficult for us to be terribly close.
Okay, different circle. One of the things that kind of surprises me is when she was on the show here back during the primaries, she gave me the impression that her single primary focus was on veterans. And with that, then you're kind of giving me a different view, maybe.
I wouldn't say that I'm giving a different view. I think that when some people propose things regarding veterans, it's easy to look for those things that don't necessarily have great teeth and aren't going to cause a great deal of disruption.
Okay.
I think that one of the things that I've seen in the House, and you alluded to this in terms of our ability to communicate with one another on mutually respectful terms, is one thing that we are lacking is an agitator to come in and jump up and down and take on the fights that need to occur. When we've got veterans that are attempting to commit suicide every 20 minutes in this country, and we have $30 million worth of discretionary spending available for veteran services here in the state of Michigan, and not $1 is being spent on those because they're all earmarked for proven programs, one has to question someone's intent to utilize those funds to help veterans.
Okay, in this case, you're questioning Holly's.
No, not necessarily just Holly's. I think it's kind of across the board.
I got to tell you, in defense of Holly, whether she's on the mark or not, I don't know, but I can tell you that I genuinely believe her when she looks me in the eye and says, this is a passionate topic of mine.
Oh, absolutely.
I thoroughly believe her when she tells me that. And listen, I've had some candidates on here that I really agree with across the board that I didn't believe anything they told me. And politically, we were in alignment, but I was getting a lot of smoke blown at me. I didn't feel that was the case with her, whether we agree on everything or not. I think she's very sincere with her position on the veterans' support.
Can I just change the subject a little bit since you're here and Holly isn't?
Yes.
You are in, at best, what would be called a moderate district. If you were to run as a passionate, partisan, right-wing Republican, you'd have no chance. You were clearly a much more moderate Republican, certainly the kind of candidate that if a Republican was going to have an opportunity to win in this historically Democrat district, you'd be the guy, I would say for sure, who would be the one who would have that chance. But if you're going to run, you've got to articulate, and Marcia has yet to do this, by the way, your opponent, but you've got to articulate what are the issues that are important. You've mentioned one, but in terms of representing Muskegon County, let's say aside from veterans issues, which are critically important, as we saw just with the tremendous outpouring in the Legends flight just a few days ago here in Muskegon County, but what are the issues that are really, really important that differentiate you from the person that you hope to unseat?
Well, one of the things, we've got Michigan Economic Development Corporation based in Lansing. It is essentially the economic development arm for the governor. The MEDC has done absolutely nothing to help job creation here in Muskegon County.
Now, that's essentially a Republican-controlled, because of the governor, it's a Republican-controlled entity.
Absolutely. And the governor is focused on job creation in the city of Detroit and the greater Detroit metro area. Here in Muskegon County, there are two unemployment rates that nobody really wants to talk about. The first one is 8.3%, which is the percentage rate of those individuals in the county that are actually getting unemployment benefits. And the other is 20.6%, which is the actual unemployment rate here in Muskegon County. When you're at 20.6% unemployment, you're at 1/5 of your populace that is currently unemployed. That isn't acceptable.
You're literally at the Great Depression rate of unemployment at its peak. By the way,
absolutely
not at its 10-year run, which was around 10, which is where the rest of the country really is at. But to say 20 is at near the peak of the Great Depression at its worst 6-month measurement.
Absolutely. And when you look at crime rates in the inner city, are we surprised that the individuals in the inner city are committing crimes when they can't get jobs? I know that we can go on and on about benefits and whether or not the food stamp program is overly utilized, whether the welfare programs are overutilized. But I think first and foremost, if you take care of the economy and bring jobs back to the area, bring the solid education areas back to the community. If you retain college graduates, right now Muskegon County is retaining 1 in 5 college graduates.
Well, of course, they're not going to stay here if they can't find a job. So while education is important, it does seem to me that your point earlier, which is focusing on job growth, is the critical key. And I guess I know that we're running out of time here. I don't know if we're going to have another segment, but it would be interesting to know what ideas you would have in terms of promoting employment opportunities. I do know one of the things that's coming up in this November election are 2 votes within the city of Muskegon to increase the property tax within the city of Muskegon, which, if both pass, that will mean that there will have been, in the span of 1 year, a 50% increase in the Muskegon city property tax. Yeah. That can't be good for anybody interested in looking for jobs.
That's insane is what it is. We won't have time today, but listen, I think that Jim is right. We need to get you back here before the bell rings on your race, and let's drive right into those topics, because I think that's hugely important, and he's spot on with it. Tell me, though, so listeners know, how can they reach out to you or your candidacy, your campaign?
If you email me at ksberman, B-E-R-M-A-N, at charter.net, or feel free to call me on my cell phone at area code 708. I apologize for the area code. I've had it since 1988, but it's 708-209-7609. And I would be more than happy to talk with anybody about what's going on in the race, and certainly could use any help or any organizations that want to take the time to talk to me. Very
nice. Ken, thanks for coming in today. Abigail, happy birthday. Ken, you've got a beautiful family.
I'm very fortunate. My wife's a teacher in Montague, so...
Very, very nice. Listen, we look forward to having you back on again.
I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you very much.
Folks, we'll be right back.
You're listening to News Talk 1090, WKBZ. News Talk 1090, WKBZ.
Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show here with Jim Riley and me, Mike Hewitt.
Hey, and we got the legendary Oscar Osbo over there.
He is. What did you say? He puts the O in radio?
Put the O in radio, and as I doing a little sat down, I was doing a little bit of looking at the letters of the alphabet, and he also put the R.
He did. He's on it.
In radio.
Yeah, Oscar is on
Oscar Radio.
Then there we go. Listen, and he is in complete control of the show.
Yes, he is.
Remember a few weeks ago when he clipped your microphone for a moment, just to let you know?
Actually, I only heard about that. I thought I was, just warbling on the radio.
It was probably one of the...
Little did I know.
It may have been one of the high water marks of the show, because your lips were moving, but nobody could hear you.
It was... yes, it was actually. It was ultimately a highlight for me also.
That is funny. Listen, folks, call in phone number 855-357-1911. Today's topic, Jim, what do you know about the proper role of government?
Well, I think it's a really, really good choice of a topic today because of the announcement down in, I believe it was in Texas someplace, of the second Ebola patient being found or being diagnosed. And I believe that the first thing that the government at any level, be it the federal government or state or local government, is to protect the people.
Right, protect life.
And there was a time, I think, and I don't think that time was that long ago, that most people had pretty good confidence in the role of the governments, the various governments, to protect the people. I think that there is... right now, a lot of questioning of that, and on the national level, of course, we're seeing the situation, all the contradictory commentary from, for instance, the head of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Thomas Frieden, who has, one day said that, quote, the Ebola virus, and when I say one day, this is just about 2 weeks ago, the Ebola virus is rare, difficult to transmit, and kills fewer people than flu or measles. Now, that was his exact quote. At the same time, the CDC's own researchers released a report saying, quote, that by January 20th of 2015, which is 4 months from now,
right,
there will be, didn't say there may be, said there will be a total of approximately 550,000 Ebola cases in Liberia and Sierra Leone, or 1.4 million if corrections for underreporting are made. So what we have is the people who are supposed to be protecting us, at least from diseases, and of course this Ebola is a very frightening disease. the leaders, we certainly saw the same situation with President Obama saying in late September, mid to late September, that it was very unlikely that Ebola could ever cross over from Africa into the North American area. And now, of course, that's changed. We don't trust what they're saying. I think we're not so much fearful of Ebola as we are fearful of the people who are saying, hey, I'm from the government and I'm here to protect you.
We watched Contagion the other evening.
Oh, it's got to look awful newsy, doesn't it?
It does, and I got to tell you, one of the things that I picked up on is that all of those movies that have that general, the infectious taking over the world thing, they all start out about the same way, and it's the government saying, "Don't worry about it; it's going to be okay. Go on about your business."
It is so frightening. You could take the phoniest, goofiest old movie talking about the blob or the invaders from Mars, and the government functionary saying, "Don't worry, we've got everything under control."
Oh yeah,
and you could actually substitute what we've seen on television word for word, and the movie wouldn't lose anything.
Absolutely wouldn't. Meanwhile, they're moving the president to an undisclosed location and hiding him away in the subterranean. And you go, wait a minute. Sounds a little bit worse than they're saying. He's got a new background whenever he addresses the nation. I'm being flippant, but that's how the movies go, and this doesn't appear to be all that removed from them.
Well, it is frightening to me. And government, we know that it's out there telling us the size, or at least trying to tell us the size of big gulps that we would be allowed to purchase, and it's telling us how much salt should be, and et cetera, and so on. But the big things, if you've got a child, and this enterovirus, which is now killing American children, and we're now finding there have been some folks who sat down. Thankfully, we do have the internet available to us, and they looked at where all these various immigrant children who came up from Guatemala and other places recently, and they looked at where they went. And it's in those areas where this enterovirus is expanding. So it's not just Ebola, and it's not just enterovirus. It's the fact that we have been promised. We are supporting with billions and billions of American dollars institutions within our United States to protect us, and they don't seem to be working.
Let's take a call on line 1 there, Oscar. Welcome to the Mike Hewitt Show.
Hey, how's it going?
Very, very nice. You're Greg from Indianapolis, correct?
Correct.
Good, Greg. Welcome to the Mike Hewitt Show. How can we help you today? What's on your mind, Greg?
Oh, nothing much. Just calling to show some support here and talk about a little bit of hockey. Since the hockey season got underway, and
it's beginning. We're kind of in hockey town here in Muskegon, Michigan.
Well, plus we're giving tickets away to the Lumberjacks.
Lumberjacks, we are. For the best caller today is going to get a pair of Lumberjack tickets. But you're probably too far away, and it sounds like you play hockey from what I'm reading. But listen, my note, Greg, says something about hockey and diversity. So what's your thought on diversity?
It's changed a lot over the years from what I've learned, and going through it myself, and I think it's great what the sport's doing right now. I mean, they've with the Willie O'Ree program and all that, and you have more. You have more of the owners doing inner-city projects for the kids that can't really afford it.
Yep, bringing new people to the sport that wouldn't have otherwise had an opportunity, right?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. With my family, giving me the opportunity to be able to play the sport, and it was actually something that I really loved doing. So and the thing is that if there was more opportunity for others, to play the game, which there is now. So,
Greg, do you think that opportunity ought to be advanced by government or by the business owners of those hockey teams? Who should be advancing? Who should be advancing diversity and opportunity for everybody?
It's a tough question. That's a tough question for me to answer. But I could see it both ways. I think they can both play a nice role into it. But if I were to choose, I'd probably choose the government, especially within the states, because it's just I think it'd be a little more helpful that way.
Let me ask you this. One of the things that's always concerned me is that as long as we continue to, and I don't know where you're at on these topics, and I don't want to take us that far from hockey because that was your the general point of your call, I think. But for me, whenever we start hyphenating ourselves, I'm a Native American, or I'm a Black American, or I'm a Scottish American. All of these hyphenations to me seem to divide us rather than to cause a general and open American community. It's like when I fill out a federal form, as I own a gun shop, by the way, and on the federal form it asks me if I'm Hispanic or not Hispanic, and then it makes me choose one of a number of races. The problem I have with that is I wish they would have a box on there that just allowed me to check American, because I think all of the rest of these things are cumbersome and divide. And I guess I believe until we all equally embrace equality, we're not really actually going to have it. Am I wrong on that?
No, I mean I totally agree with you. You know, I still go through it even at my job. Not so race wise, but the fact that I'm a bigger guy, so like they depend on me because I go to the gym and I lift weights. So like they do it in certain ways, not just race. But I mean, I totally agree with you on that.
Now my note says you're a black guy. Is that right, Greg?
That is correct.
Okay, now don't laugh at me here, but I'm almost 54. So when I think of hockey, I'm thinking 70s and all of that, and I don't remember a lot of black hockey players until lately. And I think that's probably part of your phone call. And I really applaud that. I think it's changing, and it needed to change.
Yeah, I mean, when I grew up, when I first started, I mean, I didn't know anybody until like I really studied the sport. You know, I mean, I would spend countless hours just trying to find, what black people actually played the sport and everything. You know,
right?
And I'm actually happy that I'm one of the few that actually got a chance to play. So.
Yeah, I think that's very, very good. How are you doing? Are you doing pretty well with it?
You know what? I'm currently done right now, but I have no regrets. What I've accomplished throughout the years with hockey. I started out high school, played juniors, then went to college and played for a couple of years, and then I played. I actually played for the Detroit Hitmen and then the West Michigan Blizzard. So,
okay, very, very nice. So you've probably been in our area up here before then.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I've been up there with Matt Wiedenhoff, was my coach.
Right.
We actually grew a great bond together. So, and that bond will never be broken.
Very cool.
He's been too supportive of me, and I've been a supporter of him, and like this guy has been like one of the greatest friends I've had, and one of the best coaches I've had too. So
yeah, he's one of those guys you can make a handshake deal with, and there's not a lot of those left anymore. Greg, listen, we got to move along, but I thank you very, very much for phone calling us today, and don't be a stranger. Call back.
All right, I will.
You have a good day, man.
All right, you too.
Jim, what do you think? Is there a government role or is it a private role to help with diversity?
Well, I really thought that was an interesting question and an interesting response. When you asked the gentleman who should be responsible, I suppose would be the word, to expanding diversity within, in this case, hockey, but within sports.
Sure.
That his view was it ought to be the government, but he had mentioned prior to that the hockey arenas and the hockey clubs are actually engaged in outreach. I know as a tennis player, for years and years and years, there were so very few black tennis players.
Right.
And I'd say the last 15, 20 years, certainly since the Venus and, oh my God, my brain's gone dead at this point, but there have been many more black athletes within the tennis world, and much of that comes from the outreach from
the sports themselves,
from the USTA and the sports themselves.
Right.
But again, there seems to be this knee jerk that the government ought to fix it because the government has such a great track record at fixing things, and I find that sad because, of course, it doesn't come free. We've got the state has its Economic Development Corporation, which seems to be a total mess, a total waste of money and spending money in bad areas all over the place. And yet, so many of the people, in particular the young people who are going to be picking up this bill, they still default and knee-jerk go back to the answer to our problem is more power, more control to various governments, and they will fix it. I disagree with that.
A quote that's been attributed to Jefferson says that government is best which governs least because its people discipline themselves. And so when I think about that sentence for a minute, I got to think then conversely, when government governs more, its people must not discipline themselves as much. They don't. So really the question is that we know there's got to be this orb of responsibility, and who gets to hold it, government or the people? To me, if the people are not vested with responsibility and the ability to carve their own destiny, if you will, then that simply doesn't happen. And it feels like, and when I look at statistics of crime as it relates to poverty and single parenthood and all of those things, it seems like the more government has become intruded and taken a role, that the opposite of the desired effect is what takes place. And that whenever we look at examples of, in this case, Greg's example of his hockey team reaching out, those things seem to be more successful. Am I thinking wrong here? Or?
Well, I would agree with you. And before you ask for more government, maybe sit down and make a list of the things, not that government accomplishes, because the governments do accomplish many things. They build the roads, they provide schools, they do any number of very positive things. But do they do them in an efficient manner? Do they do them in a financially, fiscally sustainable manner? And therein lies the ultimate situation, in that we don't have enough money to pay our bills currently. So looking to see expansion of government at a time when we've already spent all the money is frightening. And now I'm hearing that the only answer to fix this Ebola issue is more money, which seems to me to make some sense anyway, more money in various areas. But at the same time, we're allowing people to come right back into this country without any, or certainly without adequate checks.
I haven't seen any positive result of the money that they're currently spending on Ebola. So it causes me to say that they're not going to bring any new scientists to the problem. They're not going to bring any new medical facilities that are not already engaged in it to the problem. They've already got TSA in place, who still is profoundly inept on this issue as they are on whether they're going to feel up a nun versus somebody who looks like a terrorist. Hating the profile, but I've got to, because that's just life. Listen, when I look at it, recent Gallup poll said 35% prefer a less active role, while 32%, so a near polarity, are looking for a more active government. And that's kind of that's really what got me stewing on today's topic. But folks, we're going to go to a break in just a second, and write this down. Phone number to call in, 855-357-1911, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show. The call in to talk to Jim and I today, 855-357-1911. Jim, here's what I'm thinking. When I see the numbers, Gallup poll, 35% prefer a less active government, 32% a more active one. When I think of I think of a more intrusive government. That's the word I always apply to it. And then I look at the unintended consequences. An 800% increase in higher education tuition just from 1980 forward. So wages have doubled, but tuition has went up 800 times in the same period of time that
800%.
800%. Yep, I'm sorry. Yeah, 800% in the same time that wages have only doubled. To me, that's an unintended consequence of government embracing education. In other examples, I remember over in Coopersville, there was a guy building a dealership. By the way, it's out of business now. And the government, local government, not the feds, local government says, okay, based on the square footage you have, you must have 72 trees on your campus, and you must pick from one of these 3 species. And I'm thinking, what the heck kind of government? Forget whether it's fed or local or state. That's insane to me that government can come and tell a person, I see you've invested everything. You've leaned your house. You've done everything in a business that you've been in all of your life. You clearly know more about it than us. But we're going to demand that you do things like putting a fire Anzel system in a cement room that's not attached to the main building, and you will have 72 trees.
Well, if you like that, you'll love this. And this just happened not years ago, not even months ago. It happened in September. The Michigan Economic Development Corporation, which basically is a big multi-million-dollar slush fund that, in this case, Republicans control. When the Democrats control the governorship, the Democrats control it. But right now, this is under the absolute control of the Republican governor, and he can do with it as he chooses. It's just a big pile of dough that he gives off to folks he likes. The MEDC just announced that they are going to give an automobile dealership in the, I believe it's in the Dearborn area, $719,200 or $528, $719,000 to renovate its building and install a car wash on an adjacent piece of land that it owns. This is the kind of thing that is maddening. You can imagine, of course, if you were trying to compete with another car dealership in town and you were not as politically well connected. You can imagine if, in fact, your governor might come to you at some point in November, December, or January of next year and say, folks, we have managed this state so well, but we're just out of money because we've managed it so well, and now we need a big new tax because we have to fix the roads. At the same time that they're giving away $750,000 to a car dealership. At the same time, actually, more recently, this is just 2 weeks ago. You'll love this one. Did you know MEDC, Michigan Economic Development Corporation, they have this is wonderful, a mobile cuisine startup program.
What the heck does that mean?
Well, there we go. They always come up with nifty little names. They give out grants. In this case, it's $7,775 to Dia de los Tacos, food truck owner up in the UP. He has apparently a food truck.
How much do they give?
Just $7,700.
Okay.
The program has provided one-time grants of up to $10,000 to new food truck businesses or growing pre-existing businesses. That's where your tax dollars is going, folks. And this is, you may think this is a great idea, but the people who are making these decisions to divert money that could go to potholes, could go to any number of other things that we are told are critically important, they're diverting that money for purely political reasons. I mean, are you telling me that the mobile cuisine startup program just came out of thin air? Nobody's uncle or grandpa or brother-in-law didn't have a connection with the Michigan MEDC? I think not.
Renegade River, that is one of the sponsors of this show, is in Spring Lake. And it's located right next to the Spring Lake Village. And 1 block away from the Spring Lake Village is the Spring Lake Township. Renegade River gets a property tax bill, or a personal tax bill, rather, from both of those two governing bodies. They're 1 block apart. They both govern Renegade Rivers. To me, that's local. That's insane. Let me give you a quick example of where some of these things are just mind-boggling. This past week, maybe you saw it in the news, there was a gas main that had been broken in downtown Spring Lake. And what had happened is the gas company, this was secondhand, so I hope I'm close to accurate. My understanding is, according to one of the public works workers, is that the gas company had used one of those modern equipment drilling pieces where it advances the pipeline where they're installing from one point to another, so they don't have to actually trench up. And when they did that, they had inadvertently drove their pipe through the local sewage system. So no telling when that happened. And by the way, there's a stack of government regulations that are probably deeper than knee-deep that govern that, both on a local and on a state level. And
to make sure that would never happen.
To make sure that's
why you have those regulations.
Oh, yeah, there's a stack of them now. Don't ever do this, and this. Understand that the actual action of doing it, there was no criminal intent. It was an accident, no more, no less. Well, then the next non-criminal intent is when the public works folks were trying to clean out the sewer, they accidentally spiked that pipe that was there accidentally in the first place. Now you get a big leak. They did a voluntary evacuation. And you can sit down and rationalize how these things happen. Even though there's all kinds of layers of government regulation, we still know that people are humans and mistakes are made. So the next day, here's the part that got me, not the actual incident itself. The next day, the workers are out work. I get to the shop in the morning, and all of the parking spots out in front of Renegade River, right there on M104 or Savage Street, downtown Spring Lake, all of the parking lots for the entire block are all blocked off. And the road that's heading out of town is blocked off. So they've got people that are heading east traveling in the turning lane, and the other folks are in their normal lane, normally a 3-lane road there. Absolutely turned off the business for all of the businesses on that block. We're just done. So I go out first thing before I even walk in the shop and ask one of the public works guys, why do you need all of these spots blocked for what you're working on across the next crossway on the inside of the sidewalk line? I'm not convinced I understand why I have to lose my parking spot for you folks to work that far up. He says, it's not us, it's MDOT. What does MDOT do? Well, MDOT regulates how far you have to be away, and because this is technically a state highway, well, obviously it's not a state highway like I think of a state highway. It's a fairly slow trafficked road, typically 35 miles an hour. It's right in front of the village government institute or agency. I'm standing out there.
It's just a 2-lane road for most of us.
It's a 2-lane road with a turning lane that lasts. The turning lane by itself only lasts about a half a block. I walk down to the very end where they start coning. It's a city block away with a crossroad and a sidewalk between where we're at, and you just stand back and think, so these laws that people demand more of don't allow common sense.
Well, here's the thing. Whether they allow common sense or not might be important, except for this one fact, and this is what I wish they would be teaching in schools. There is no penalty for coming up with a stupid idea or enforcing a stupid policy if you're in government. If you are in the private business and you decide, I'm going to come out with a new recipe for Coca-Cola, there is immediate and very painful response if, in fact, your new recipe for Coca-Cola is a crummy one. If you come out with a new car called the Edsel, and people don't want to buy it, an individual corporation is going to suffer. But if business has to operate under these, why does, in fact, the government seems absolutely immune to that kind of thing? And a classic example is we have not just your situation that you just faced, where they have all the regulations, it all violates everything, no big deal. They come up with policies that were part of these giant regulations. You have to suffer for their mistake. Did anybody lose his job, get a penalty, get anything at all? There's no structure set up to penalize people for making bad decisions in government.
None. It's the same.
Obamacare is a classic case.
Classic case, but to me, it's just all of these things are absent of any allowance for judgment to be made on the scene. So in the case of what I was trying to describe, you have got a lot of very, very smart people that understand what they were doing, but they're not allowed to make any kind of judgment call. So all the businesses are just flat out of business because somebody somewhere a long time ago thought that would be a great idea without any kind of. Listen, speaking of private business, let me re-bring up a couple folks that sponsor this show. I mentioned Renegade River is Spring Lake, but also there is Design to Dine, which is a custom catering company, and you can look them up, folks, at www.design-to-dine.com. So designtodine.com. And then the other is Polano Consulting, which is a first-class business consulting specializing in small business and sports and small business startups. You can go to polanoconsulting.com. That's spelled P-A-L-A-N-O consulting.com. So that was a little bit of sponsorship. That's all about capitalism. Don't you love it?
That's what pays the bills, baby.
I love it. Absolutely love it.
Well, and you felt, this is a perfect example. You felt a responsibility to make sure they got mentioned, because if in fact you choose not to mention them, you may lose that sponsorship. Government doesn't operate that way. PBS and NPR extorts very easily government money. They not only don't pay their fair share in taxes, they don't pay their fair share in property taxes. They don't even show a profit ever, so they don't even show taxes on their profits. They actually take money in. Well, we're not that way, folks. This is private company right here, and you're working your best to make it go.
They don't even really need an antenna, because I don't know that anybody's listening, but nobody cares if anybody's listening, because they're funded either way.
They do not care if they have listeners because they're funded either way. That's government, isn't it?
It's a fascinating thing.
Yes, gotta love it.
It really just mind-boggling. Talk about unintended consequences. Listen, I did a little bit of study recently, and you can maybe help me with this in our couple minutes we got left. The uber left, not just Democrats, but the socialist, hard socialists, the uber left, as I like
Hollywood.
Hollywood, but listen, a lot of the folks that run for office on a Democrat ticket are zealot. I don't know how else to say it, but
Marcia Hovey Wright, who is our current state rep here, certainly be one of those.
Well, I've tried to find an example of any place contemporarily or in history where there was a time or a society that didn't have rich and poor. I couldn't find any example, because I bring that up because they're always ranting about how America's got too many rich people and too many poor people. And so I said, let me look at the Russia under Soviet Union, Russia now. I always hear Sweden, except for Sweden has been converting to capitalism as fast as they can because it was destroying their economy. I can't find any example where what they're asking for has done anything but fail.
Well, I couldn't agree. Agree with you more.
Why would someone look at all of that and say, yeah, but we can do it better? I just find that so fascinating.
Well, I think I can tell you the answer. The answer, quite simply, is that most Americans do not know what you just said. Pew study just came out. 20% of Americans realize that the federal government spends more money on Social Security than on foreign aid, transportation, and interest on the government debt in total. We don't know anything.
Folks, have a great week. We'll see you next week.